Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another GreenRope webinar. We're really excited today. We've got an exciting topic and a new panelist that we're excited to introduce. My name is Alessandra Guyman. I am the marketing manager here at GreenRope, and I will be moderating today's panel. Along with me today, we've got our GreenRope CEO, Lars Helgeson, and we also have a CEO of Content Launch, Jon Wuebben, who's going to be giving a great presentation today on content and CRM. We're going to first go through some slides, and then we're going to have a Q&A session and really dig deep into data, CRM, and your content marketing strategy. And then, of course, at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So please feel free to input your questions into the questions box throughout the webinar, and we will make sure to answer all of them at the end. All right, well, without further ado, I'm going to hand the reins over to our CEO, Lars Helgeson.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming, and thank you, Jon, for being a part of this. I think you're all going to get a lot of great benefit out of some of the things that Jon's going to share with you today, and really about how important it is to use content as a way to drive people to take action. So, you know, in the modern era, people are inundated with different forms of marketing and messaging, and figuring out the best way to position it and strategize about it is an important thing that every business or every successful business needs to know how to do. So Jon, I've known for a while now. It's been a couple of years, and his new business Content Launch is a very useful service. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end. We're going to start first, though, by talking about the concepts behind how to use content most effectively. So without too much more ado, Jon, take it away.
Thanks, Lars. Hey, everybody. Appreciate your time today. And I know everyone's time is valuable, and we all have lots of things we can be doing at any given time. So we're going to try and pack in some good value here with this webinar. So let's break it down. So content and CRM. I think what we find typically is that companies do one or the other pretty good, but it's very rare that any given company does both really well. And you can't have one without the other, in true honesty. If you're really nurturing your leads and really going out there with a content marketing approach where you're building relationship, it's very rare that I've seen in my clients anyway, where they're knocking out of the park with content and CRM together, because they're really joined at the hip. And we'll discuss all the details of why that is and what you can do to really bring them together closer over the next few months. So what are CRMs really great for? Well, obviously building relationships, right, and extending the customer life cycle. Your CRM is something that you need to touch every day, right? And it's not just the sales folks, it's everybody in the organization, really, marketing and sales, the C-suite, everyone needs to be involved in that, just like everyone needs to be involved in content marketing if you really want to do it well. So, you know, nothing helps in doing this better than sharing content, right, that helps your customer succeed. And that's the key right there, sharing content that helps your customer succeed, not sharing content that helps you make a sale, right? That's a very clear distinction, and that's still something that a lot of companies are not really grasping. I want you to, you know, see it differently. For the first 10 touches, let's say the first 10 touches with that new prospect, I want you to just educate. I want you to just share tips that you think will benefit them as a potential customer, right? So that's a shift in mindset, but it's something that's going to be really important if you want to succeed with content marketing within your CRM. So if you're building relationships, you absolutely have to have a CRM in order to do that. I mean, we all remember, some of us remember, you know, 10, 15 years ago, maybe when we were pre-CRM, or we were doing things manually, or just going through our Gmail and sending one-off emails. It just got to be real cumbersome real quickly. So without a CRM, you can't automate it, you can't systematize it. So that's the key, is it's all about relationship building, and your CRM is going to get that done for you. So the first thing you need to do is get to know your audience, right? So CRM tools are going to help you get to know the audience and see who consumes that content that you create. So you got to look at the data, right? You got to look at what's showing through your dashboard, and look at where the trends are. who is actually consuming that content, who's interacting with that content when you're sending out those email nurture campaigns. Who's reading what and what area of the email are they looking at? What are they downloading? Who's downloading it? All that stuff you got to look at and see the consumption patterns in the same way that you'd identify, with your customer there. So this is going to help content marketers define the goals and the unique selling propositions and proposals. So once you can see what's being consumed, then you can establish the KPIs and kind of bring in the sales folks at that point, so you can show them what's working, what's not working. So this all helps you determine what kinds of content you're going to produce and at what times will be the most relevant to deliver it to your audience. So what type of content to produce? So of course you're going to be sending out emails. You also want to be thinking about what type of lead generation content can you attach and link in those emails. So ebooks, white papers, case studies, video tutorials, right? So all this kind of educational content. This is going to take time to produce, but it's clearly an investment that's going to pay off if you do it correctly. Again, it doesn't have to be a lot of stuff. It could be just 2 or 3 ebooks that are really value added and are popular out there. You gotta create something that people want and people would actually pay for, right? So when you're creating that ebook or white paper, ask yourself, is this so good that people would actually pay us to get this piece of content? Or at the very least, would they sign up? Would they give us their email address and name in order to get this content? Now, that's a whole different topic in terms of if you're going to gate it or not. Typically we say, test it out and mix it up 50-50 and see what works. But more often than not, we'd like to have most of your content ungated. In other words, you're just giving it away, and then hopefully they'll be so engaged with your content that they're going to follow you and sign up for your newsletter, etc. Obviously, you're going to get more people downloading that content if you're not asking for their data, but just test it out. That's always a good rule of thumb. So determine the metrics to use, right? So that's next. So your CRM tools can help you determine what kind of metrics to use that allow for the understanding of what kind of impact the content and content distribution strategy will have. So you're looking at all kinds of data, right? From CTRs, from conversions. Be sure you're A/B testing all that. And all this data is going to allow you to test different voices, styles, tone, branding approaches. It's going to take time, right? If you're brand new at doing this, and you're not really sure what your brand message is, your brand personality is, you're going to need to kind of establish that and figure out what that is, and then be consistent, right? Branding is all about repetition and consistency. And if you think about all the great branders of the world, all the great companies that have come before us that have done really well in branding, it's, they knock it out of the park every time on tone and consistency. You know what to expect, whether it's Starbucks or Apple or all the great brands. Really study, what is it about their communications and their content that really, brings that branding home. And it's really that consistent messaging, that personality that just kind of comes through. And I think another piece of information that's important is really saying less with more, right? Or saying more with less, right? So you don't have to have an email that's 3 paragraphs long. The emails that do really well are those 1, 2, and 3 sentence emails. And when you craft that email, or when you craft any kind of content, what I want you to do is look at it and say to yourself, okay, what words can we take out of this sentence, of this paragraph, so that we're just getting to the heart of the matter. We're just using the words that we need. And if you look at all the great novelists of all time, Ernest Hemingway, that's what Ernest Hemingway is known for, is he would have very simple sentences, very direct and to the point, and through that simplicity, it delivered much more than what was on the page. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I see still, having been in this industry for 17 years, is how many times are we still getting emails that are 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs long or longer? Nobody's reading that stuff, guys. It's all about 1, 2, and 3 sentence emails. It's all about, with your white papers and ebooks, obviously can be longer and more comprehensive there, but still same idea. Brevity is important, and really saying something that's meaningful, no fluff, right? Bringing the substance and all the content that you create. But getting back to this slide, you really need to look at the metrics, right? So Whether you're talking about content marketing or your CRM, it's part art, part science, right? And this is the science part. So when you're looking at the data, see the trends, understand, what the KPIs should be, and then roll out some tests and have enough information where you can actually make some informed decisions. All right, so if you want to just break it down, really, CRM is your engine and content is the fuel, right? And you can't have one without the other. So you can use your CRM at every stage, right, for production and promotion. You want to fully unlock the content's potential as the primary tool for creating that continuous customer engagement. Now, what do we mean by that? Continuous customer engagement. What I want you to see your content and your content marketing efforts as is really, it's sort of like a serial, like a series, right? Whether it's your favorite television series, what keeps you coming back for more? When you're watching, Game of Thrones or Veep or Parks and Recreation, any of these great TV programs that have come on the scene over the last 10 years, what keeps you coming back for more? Whether it's that cliffhanger mentality or it's the emotional drama or the storytelling, right? All of that is important, and so you want to keep your folks coming back for more. So think of your content and your content marketing in that approach, right? So if that's what you're doing and you're really trying to tell a story, you're not going to give it all to them all at once, right? You're going to, if you have 10 emails over a 10-week period and you're nurturing these leads, you're going to give them bite-sized pieces, right? Think of it as you're giving them one chapter from the book in the first touch, the second chapter, the second touch, and just give them bite-sized pieces and always leave them coming back or wanting more for the next time, right? So that's sort of the psychology of content that's going to be important. And all of this is going to increase your opens and your downloads and on that third point, your brand likability, your familiarity, and ultimately at the end of the day, sales. But I don't want you to think about sales first, right? Sales is down the line. Sales is important, but it's your third or fourth consideration when you're looking at content marketing. I mean, that's the whole idea. That's why content marketing became the de facto standard of how you market today, is that everybody was getting sick of being pitched and being sold to, right? So, if we flash back 10 years ago, content marketing was just kind of in its infancy. And the reason why it worked right out of the gate is because it was different and it stood out and there was substance behind it. And we actually, turns out we like to be educated. We like to be wined and dined, if you will. We like to be nurtured, right? So if you're at a cocktail party, right, you're not going to walk up to someone you don't know and say, "Hey, how are you? I'm John, and hey, let's get married," right? That's what a sales pitch email is like, right? So again, I want you to take a step back and really understand kind of the big picture here. And if you're the recipient, you're the customer on the other end getting this content, how would you respond? And we're all customers, right? We all buy stuff, so we know those brands that really engage with us. I mean, why does Nordstrom have such great customer loyalty? Why does Apple have such great customer loyalty? Just go on down the line. The content's different. The engagement's different. The nurturing is different. And that's what I want you to remember as you're doing all this in your CRM, when you're crafting the emails, you're crafting the downloadable content, is you got to have that front and center all the time. So what does this mean? What are we talking about here? We're talking about listening to your customers, right? Truly listening, okay? And what does that mean? It means, like when you're in conversation with somebody, how many times have you kind of seen the other person, thinking about what they're going to say in response to you, and they're not really listening, right? They're not totally actively listening. That's kind of how it's like when we're trying to pitch our products and our services to our customers or our prospects. We're already like thinking about that next thing we're going to say, right? So listening is all about asking questions. It's about really understanding the pain points, and then asking follow-up questions, right? And it's not just email surveys. It's in-person stuff, like being at trade shows and actually asking these questions and having that FaceTime with your customers. So within your CRM, you have the ability to really listen, right? Because you can see the response, you can see the breadcrumbs, right? The email history. You can track your customers' communications at every stage in the sales cycle, so you can see why real quickly this can get out of hand. You have to, if you're a big company and you've got thousands of customers coming in or thousands of prospects coming in on a weekly or monthly basis, things can get out of hand real quickly, right? So you have to have a system and you have to have the automation built in. So when you do all this and you set it up correctly, the listening becomes easier, right? And that's the key. If you can really listen and then make that easier and automate some of that, it's going to be so much simpler to make this successful in the long term. So by digging into this data, you can find that sweet spot. So you want to really pay attention to the reason they reached out to you in the first place, the reason they're responding, okay? There are reasons for saying no to you, and you're going to get some no's. You're going to get some folks that get pissed off, right? And you have to address that. Pay attention to their hesitations when adopting your product or service into their life or the business. There's always a period of time when they're going to have questions or it's not working for them. I know with our company, we have a SaaS product, and the training piece of that is critical, right? If we don't train them correctly and they don't really understand what the product does in the first 3 weeks, then we're going to lose them 9 times out of 10. Same thing with this whole process with communicating your content. You have to really pay attention to that in the first few touches. So and then last, pay attention to their reasons for loving what you have to offer, right? You're going to have, every company has customers that absolutely love what they do. And these are brand loyals, these are brand ambassadors. And these are the folks that are going to write your case studies. These are the folks that are going to help you with testimonials, right? These are the folks that will do videos for you. And those are your VIP folks, right? And you want to find out who those people are. And let's say you've got 1,000 folks you're touching. Chances are you're going to have 5 to 10% of those folks, so 50 to 100, who are those people, right? So those are the folks that are going to do the heavy lifting for you because they want to help you, because they love your products and services, they love your company, they may be friends of yours, right? So anyway, the point being, within your CRM, identify those folks, and obviously with every group of customers that you're emailing, you want to have different approaches, right? Different emails, perhaps different ways of saying things, right? And for these VIP customers, it's gonna be more friendly tone, it's gonna be more personalized. So definitely look for that and hone in on it. Be sure to automate, right? I mean, one of the great things about your CRM is the automation functionality, and there's not enough of this that happens, right? We're still going in and doing way too many manual things with all the apps that we use. When you truly automate, it's going to take a lot of time on the front end to do this. It's going to take many, many hours to set things up, but it's going to pay off in the long run. So you can automate these key areas, right? Lead management, right? And I'm not going to read all this. You can take a look at the slides later and kind of take a deeper dive. Lead engagement logs, okay? Lead nurturing, customer retention, organization and planning. All these things, all these steps in the process, you can bring automation to. And that's one of the great things about AI. And that's why AI is going to really revolutionize marketing in every area of business. Is through AI, we can automate a lot of this stuff. So don't forget to automate. Of course, social integration is key, right? So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all these social channels, it's going to be a key part of your CRM. So all your messages, you want to have your social icons on the bottom or the top of your emails, in your ebooks and white papers, so when they click on that, automatically goes to your profile. So a lot of folks only engage with you through social, right? So if those customers are the ones we're talking about, then you have to be where they are. And customer service obviously is a cornerstone of CRM. Customer service, a lot of that customer interaction comes through social, and they expect a response, right? Not within 24 hours, but within an hour or two, right? I mean, some folks expect an immediate response, which is probably not going to be realistic for you, but I'd say within an hour is probably good. And so that all needs to be tied into your CRM, right? The CRM needs to speak to your social channels and vice versa. So this bottom point here, leveraging social CRM increases customer loyalty 55% and sales revenue 54%. This came from Salesforce last year in a study they did. Those are huge numbers, guys. And again, the reason we're bringing this up is because a lot of companies are still not there on the social integration. Maybe they've got their Facebook integration done and they're knocking that out of the park, but Twitter and LinkedIn are not there. You really need to make sure you're doing it for all the social channels and that you're responding quickly. So we're getting to the very end here. I've gone very quickly. Like I said, feel free to look at the slides later and kind of, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us in the upcoming weeks and days. So the takeaways, let's just kind of bring it all home here. So number one, monitoring clicks, comments, and traffic on the content you create. So it's not enough to set everything up and have the great content. You got to look at the KPIs, got to look at the data, and look at and see what's going on. What are the trends? And what you're going to find is there's going to be surprises. There's going to be things that you don't expect, right? I mean, when we do our keyword research, right, and we see what keywords respond, if we're talking about SEO, there's so many surprises that come through that process. That's been in the grand scheme of online marketing for me. That's been one of the real ahas. Is wow, like there's so many other keyword phrases I had no idea people were searching for to try and find my company. Same thing with all this lead nurturing and the content you create. There's going to be surprises and positive surprises where you can really hone in on what's working and what's not. Number two, be versatile. Okay, get creative where you need to, and what's the great thing about small nimble companies is they can change on a dime. They can bring in a new email or change the flow, or and that's something that if you're a smaller company or smaller agency, you can make changes quickly. Whereas a big company, it could be a competitor of yours, they're gonna have to go through legal and make get approvals and this and that. So being versatile is going to be important because there could be an email blast you send out that gets a lot of negative feedback, right? Maybe you missed something, or there's a misspelling that really stood out, or maybe the ebook wasn't attached correctly, or the link was wrong. So that kind of stuff can be changed very quickly, and that's where you want to be versatile. Third, track user engagement, right? Know who, what, when, where, and why all these folks are engaging with your content, and looking at your CRM on a daily basis for that. Number four, using data collected within your CRM to manage and communicate with that, and then track your preferences and target them accordingly, okay? I know some of this, as I've gone through in the last 20 minutes, seems pretty straightforward and pretty basic, but that's the stuff we fall down on. It's the blocking and tackling where we kind of miss some of that stuff, right? Because we take it for granted. So it's important that you get all these bases covered. Lastly, change your mentality. This is a psychology thing for some companies. It's a change in mindset. Whether you're going from an advertising paradigm to a content marketing paradigm, or you're going from using a big CRM, a big clunky CRM, to a more nimble CRM, or you're trying to get your C-suite on board with the new idea of using social and CRM together. All these changes that have been happening over the last few years, it's for some folks within big corporations especially, it's a change in mentality. So I want you to think of CRM as the tool that helps you get creative with content, helps you connect with content, which will in turn improve your CRM, right? So you can't have one without the other. And with that, we're going to wrap up.
All right, thank you very much. This is very, very informative. I think there's a lot of good stuff there. Alessandra, do you want to monitor the questions and throw them our way?
Yeah, no, I think that was a lot of great information. That was great. I really appreciate it. And I've got a few questions, and I know that we already have a couple questions coming in from the audience. But I wanted to kind of start with, can you give the audience, specific examples of data that they can help use to build their content? So, if you could maybe provide sort of a simple example and then maybe a little bit more of a complex one, just to give something to us that we can take away and maybe start doing, after listening to this webinar.
Can you repeat just the first part of that question? For some reason, the audio didn't come quite through on my end.
Yeah, no, of course. So just that if you could give the audience specific examples of data that they can use to help build their content.
Well, number one is to understand, who are your most loyal customers, right? Who are the folks that keep purchasing from you? And that group is going to be special, and the communication with them is going to be very different than the communication that you have with prospects, or even folks that are kind of in the middle. So one of the mistakes that we see happen a lot is that everybody gets the same email, right? Everyone gets the same content, and that's a big mistake, because you have different buyer personas, you have different folks along the lead nurture process, along the funnel. that need to be communicated in unique ways, right? So, and you'll know who those folks are. You look at the sales data. That's a real quick, easy way to find out who your most loyal customers are. But then after that, it's okay, when you send out those email blasts, who's responding, who's clicking, what's the response rate, and then look at the industry averages too, because without that, you're going to be kind of operating in a vacuum and not really understanding if what you're seeing is good or bad. And so you have to take kind of a wider view of it, and I'll let Lars kind of answer too.
I mean, and specifically, sorry, I want to see, like, can you give like, and Lars, this might be something that you want to chime in on, like specific data sets, like, age, gender, location, something really specific in terms of like what you can start to use now to start, to start building that more personalized, targeted content.
I think from a CRM perspective, it's important to take a step back and understand what your customer journey is, where you look at how someone is going to approach you from the very beginning. And so if you look at a lead and you try to model what they're going to do, and if you don't already have some experience working with journeyflow.com, that's a free tool that we offer that helps you do this on a strategic level. But you can also, even if you just use a piece of paper and write down or a whiteboard, what happens when someone first comes in contact with your brand, and what are you going to try to make them do? And so as we drive them down the sales process, we look at the things that will influence the decisions that they make. And part of that will be understanding what is going to make someone, say, choose one product or another. But a big part of that is personalization, so that you know that if you're targeting a specific segment, so maybe it's males or females or people in a certain age bracket or people in a certain income bracket, you have to have that data stored within your CRM to be able to do that personalization. So that's a first place to start. And on the basic level, we've all seen this where you can use placeholders, like Dear Joe, Dear Mary, doing that in email content. But you can also do that in web pages, you can do that in print material, and then being able to take that information and use it in what we call dynamic placeholders. So when you're within the GreenRope system, you'll see when you're building email, there's a little merge button. It's got a little merge yellow diamond shape. And in there is where you can put in those placeholders for that content. And so you can say, if someone is in this particular market segment, for example, so maybe if someone is male, then you put an article that's targeted towards a male audience. And if someone is female, you target them towards a female audience. Or if you have someone that's maybe in a particular geographic area or has an interest about a certain thing, then you want to be able to tailor your content towards the people that fall into those categories. So within GreenRope, the two parts of that are, well, first you have to understand what data you need, then you have to store that data within the CRM, most likely as a custom user field. And then, although we do have the standard fields for things like gender, but then also as you build your content, if you know that someone can fall into those categories, then really personalize that content and make it so that if you are going to send a message out, that it's different for each of those people. So we even do this, Alessandra, I know you can comment on this when we send our email newsletters out, that we send a different version to people who are active users versus people who are not active users, people who are leads, who are still investigating which CRM they want to choose, because some of the more advanced features are really more targeted towards our user audience, and some of the blogs that we write are more targeted towards our users. And so by personalizing that content, we can really focus and narrow in on the message that's going to resonate the most with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes a huge difference too in the engagement rates. And it doesn't make sense to send, content that we send to our users, that's very specific to the system, to non-users who it wouldn't mean anything to them. And especially because we have two different end goals when we're reaching out to those people. And so we want to make sure that the content that we're sharing with each specific group and each specific segment, meets that end goal, or in hopes of either converting the non-users to users or bringing them back to get a demo or a trial, and for our users to educate and inform and provide value.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback on what you both mentioned there, what we're really talking about here from a content marketing perspective is establishing your buyer personas, right? Your user personas. So when we say buyer personas, we mean, what types of customers do you have? And most companies have anywhere from 2 to 5 customer types, and you need to find out who those folks are and then build personas around that. So what your typical customer is in a certain product category versus another product category. And when you have those buyer personas set up, then you can start tailoring the message correctly to who they are and what their needs are. So that's one part of what I'm calling the matrix here. And the second part, the other dynamic of the matrix is, when did they last purchase from us? So if they're customers, we segment our list in like 6 different ways. So we look at folks that purchased in the last month. Those are active customers. And then the second group is who purchased in the last 6 months, going back 6 months. And then 1 year, and then who hasn't, and then before that, right? And then who hasn't been active in 2 years, right? We have a group for that too. So, and then those are customers, right? And then the prospects that's a different funnel. So, so all those things need to be considered when you're setting all this up. But yeah, hopefully that addressed the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question I had was, what are some ways, and this is definitely going to be a question for both of you as well, and I think we kind of touched on some of this, but, what are some ways that you've seen clients, really successfully automate their content marketing strategy? Because it can be used for so many different things, like lead nurturing, social media, client retention. Are there different ways that you see people doing things, or unique examples that you can give of people sort of using content in these different areas?
Yeah, I know for us, we've created content since 2003 for over 700 companies, and so we have a good base of companies to look at, previous customers. And a few things, or one thing that came out as we looked through our database was the customers that really did some interesting things. And I'm thinking about 5 or 6 of these customers over the last few years. One in particular, what they did is they did something really different. They basically created 25 ebooks, okay, which is a lot of content. Over a 25-week period, they sent out a new ebook every week for 25 weeks. And they weren't asking for the sale or pitching their products or services at all during that 25-week period. So we're talking about over 6 months, right? Just constantly providing value-added content. The first time that happened, I'd never seen any company do that, because that's a big investment in time and resources and getting all those ebooks done. But what happened was they had incredible success with that campaign. And over a 6-month period after that, I think their lead rate went up like 30 or 40% based on that. They doubled down on content marketing with that approach. And so that's one that just stands out. There's a lot of different things you can do to make yourself stand out, but that was one that one of our clients did in the last couple of years.
Wow, that's a lot of ebooks. First of all, we're just actually finishing a couple ourselves, and 25 is very impressive. I think I need to step it up over here on my end.
Well, they were definitely an outlier.
Yeah, and Lars, what were you gonna chat?
Yeah, I think it still always is going to come back to understanding what that customer journey is. When you're really talking about getting people to engage, understanding how you can automate that process is important. And so, using our journeys tool that lets you create that drag and drop model of how you want things to happen. I've seen customers have massive journeys that are integrated with opportunities and being able to create invoices and triggering documents for signing, for electronic signature. All of that can be built into that automated process. And the goal that we want to build here is to use the people in your organization to do the things that people do best. And usually that comes down, at least in a sales role, that comes down to the interpersonal communication. meeting people, talking to them on the phone, getting that personal interaction, and using the software and the technology to automate the things that can and should be automated. So if you know that there's a certain educational component to your sales process, and John touched on this earlier about how the first 10 touches that you have with a lead, and that number, who you talk to, that may fluctuate a little bit. It may be different depending on your business model, but predominantly the early stages of your content marketing strategy should be focused on education. And if you can get automation to help you with that education process, that helps engage the users while making it easy on your sales staff, so that you don't have to have your salesperson or a human in your business on the phone saying the same thing over and over again, educating people in the exact same way day after day after day. When you can automate that, that lets you scale your business without having to invest as much in human resources, so that you can then put that capital towards people who actually spend their time with the meaningful conversations. And so we leverage content in many ways to create efficiency and help with the education process. It doesn't replace the human, it doesn't replace any of those things, but it augments how you do things so that you can be more efficient.
Yeah, good point, Lars. And I just wanted to give everyone a real life world example of some of the best content I've ever seen, where they did a great integration between their content and their CRM and their social. All three are working in conjunction. It's Groove. Groove HQ is the URL. Groove is a customer support software application, and they were new to the game about 3 or 4 years ago, and they were competing with big players like Zendesk and some of the others, User Voice, etc. And what they did with their content, their blogging, and their ebooks was really interesting. They basically shared their struggle and their pain with coming to market with their product. And it was the good, the bad, and the ugly. They just laid it all out there, and they explained, what went wrong and what didn't work. And through that process, and this was coming directly from the CEO, by the way, of Groove, through that process, they were able to have massive adoption in their content. Their emails always got open, their ebooks got downloaded, their blogs got read. I mean, it was an amazing result. And it was, the reason why is because it was real world, and it was their actual true story of how they got to 100,000K in MRR. But there were a lot of stops and starts and a lot of problems along the way, and they shared that with their audience. There was no pitching, there was no, hey, sign up for Groove. It was just sharing their story, and through that process, they were able to have massive adoption of their platform. And I wanted to share that because it's probably one of the best examples of bringing content together with the CRM to have massive success. So if you're out there listening on this call, I encourage you to check out Groove's blog and see how they did that over the last couple of years.
That's an interesting concept, and I like that a lot. And my next question is going to be sort of focused on you, Lars. I would like if you could talk a little bit more about CRM data and specifically marketing automation with content. What are some of your best practices and best tips for setting up triggers or using CRM data to to send leads and customers on more personalized journeys? I know we've been talking a lot about the customer journey. So, what do some of those triggers look like? And I mean, can we use data to trigger specific journeys? What is your best advice?
I like to use our own system, because we use GreenRope, obviously, to manage GreenRope, and there are a few things that we do that I think our customers and people in general can learn from. Some of it has to do with lead scoring automation. So we know, I'm sure most of you are familiar by now with lead scoring, where we have activity-based lead scoring, and we also have demographic-based lead scoring that allows you to score someone based on what they're doing or who they are. By the use of hot and cold automation lead scoring, you can do a couple things that help you with client acquisition and client retention. So when you send out content, say it's an email, or you drive people to a website where they're consuming your content, you are giving them activity-based lead scoring points. And when you can take those points and apply them to an automation and say that if someone accumulates a certain minimum number of points in a certain time period, so in our case, our hot lead scoring automation looks in 24-hour snapshots. And if someone scores at least a certain number of points, that should activate a workflow. And that workflow should at least alert someone on your team that there is a lead that's potentially interested in finding out more about your business. And so we do this. So if someone, in our specific example, if someone generates more than 20 points in a particular day, then a workflow gets activated that will alert the salesperson responsible for that particular lead that here's a lead who has suddenly become very active. So that's one example of how we can do that. Now you can pair that with sending content if you like, and then you can also go the opposite direction with cold lead scoring, which says if someone doesn't generate a certain number of points in a particular time period, and that you can vary that in our system and say you want to look back 30 days, which is what we use it for. If someone doesn't generate any points in 30 days, that's an alert to Bjorn to follow up with them. And so Bjorn then it schedules a CRM activity. Bjorn calls them and says, so what's happening? You're an account owner and you're not generating this certain minimum number of points. So that's how you can use automation to trigger both follow-ups when people are hot and follow-ups when people are cold, to make sure that you have engagement, and that when someone's engaging with you, that you react right on time. So those are a couple of examples. And so you may want to pair that if someone is coming to looking at a particular product, or they're in a particular group that you know they're interested in certain things, then that could then trigger some personalized content that gets sent to them. And again, automating the whole process of here's someone that's interested in a product or something that you're selling, and having that immediate feedback, whether that's to a salesperson on your team or to that particular lead. Some of the other things that we do, we have, and you do that within GreenRope underneath the automation lead scoring area. So automation is the top element, and then you just go down and pick lead scoring. One of the other things that we do that's also helpful is in the website analytics portion, in the tracking. You can set for a particular page, you can set if you have a particular page on your website where people can, if they hit that page or on a particular site, if they hit a minimum number of points just on that site in general, you can also have that trigger content. So, or trigger a workflow, which can then send email to someone. So say you build a microsite that's targeted towards selling a particular product or service, and you know that one of your leads gets on that website and they click around and they generate a certain number of points. You can have that workflow then trigger sending an email to that person, or setting up a CRM activity for someone on your staff to call back. And you know that if they're on that particular website, or they were on that particular page and they hit that certain minimum number of points, that you can then target content that's specific to what that person is looking for. So that's something that we do when we have leads that are on our website that generate a certain number of points. So another example of that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What you're really talking about, Lars, is what I call scaling your content marketing. We talk about scaling our companies and scaling our operations, but when you can do what you just explained and put a system around that, and let's face it, if you've got a bunch of ebooks and white papers and lots of customer groups, it gets out of hand real quickly. It can get out of hand. So all these workflows need to be automated, and when you can automate them, and things trigger and things get fired off when they need to be fired off, and they get in the inbox, and then you have engagement, you're going to be able to scale your content marketing efforts. And that's something that only probably 5% of all the companies out there have actually done successfully. And the only way you can scale your content marketing is by using a CRM and building the workflows and systematizing it. So, yep, it's definitely something that has to happen.
Yeah, and kind of tying back into the example that you gave before about customer service, That's an important part of the GreenRope platform. And everyone who is listening to this should be using the GreenRope ticketing system for customer service, because that also ties directly in with the CRM, which also ties directly in with the marketing automation. So that if someone comes to your website and they have a question or they have a problem with your product or service, then they can go and select that ticket, they fill out that form. They can describe what their issue is. They can choose a topic, and that in and of itself can trigger automation. And so again, when someone has an issue like that, you have another opportunity to reach out and provide them with helpful, useful content. We do this ourselves. If someone comes in and they request a trial or a demo, then we send a follow-up based on that request. If someone has a question, they open up a ticket about having an issue, we have that activate a workflow. So make sure that if you can automate, or if you have some content that you can send to someone as a result of them opening a support ticket, that you provide another way for you to communicate with them. And that communication can be educational. It may say, I see you're having a problem with product X. Here's some more information about it. We'll get back to you right away, that kind of thing, so that you can engage with someone right when they open that support ticket and have that immediately trigger the ability for you to send relevant content to them in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and your customers are going to have issues. They're going to have problems. They're going to be upset at times. But if you respond quickly and in a way that's meaningful, you have an opportunity to regain them back, or even become it's going to be an opportunity to connect with them in a more meaningful way. So if you can set that up and automate that response, then the fact that you got back to them within 15-20 minutes, that's going to be huge, and they're going to remember that next time.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, lots of great information there. And then my last question was, can you give some tips for keeping data organized, clean, and up to date so that people can actually use this data for their content marketing strategies? Because I know that's a huge issue for a lot of companies, especially sort of newer to this. Do you have any best practices so that they can actively utilize the data that they are collecting?
I'm going to let Lars take that one.
Yeah, I would say the biggest issue is try not to run parallel databases. If it's at all possible, don't have multiple systems out there that are allowing data to get out of sync. So, and which is really the reason why we built GreenRope in the first place, so that you can go in and you can have a single centralized database that stores all the information about the relationships and the contacts and the companies that you're working with. If you can minimize that, and if you do absolutely have to have something else out there that you're linking back to your CRM, make sure that you understand what that relationship is with that other piece of software. And so specifically knowing what fields are you mapping back and forth from that other piece of software to your CRM? How often does that data sync? If there's a conflict, who wins? All of that information has to be understood before you build that connection with that other piece of software. Otherwise, you're going to get a mishmash of data that's going to get totally out of sync, totally disorganized. And so rely on one central piece of software to manage that data, and make sure that you understand what all those relationships are. And there's a lot of, from a practical operational perspective, you want to have this in your business anyway. But there are also some legal and financial implications, especially now with GDPR, and of course some of the other things that have been around for a while with CAN-SPAM, Canadian Anti-Spam, understanding different privacy laws all over the world, making sure that you know where all of your data is. One of the things that GDPR requires is that if someone is an EU citizen, they can ask you for all of the information that you have about them. And it's one of their rights as an EU citizen. And if you don't do that, of course, regulators can come after you, and you don't want that. So the better you organize your data, not only is it good for you operationally, it's better for you for marketing, for getting your content delivered and personalized, but it's also good from a financial perspective and a legal and security perspective. the more you're organized, the better you organize your data, the better you know where your data is, the fewer ways that your data can leave. And that's probably one of the biggest threats to businesses in the modern era, is about data security and the privacy implications of that. If you have your data sitting in a spreadsheet on someone's computer somewhere, that data, if that gets stolen, could represent a massive breach of confidence and with financial implications that you have to protect. And so the better you understand your data, the more it's up to date and clean. It affects every aspect of your business. And it's one of the highest priorities, I think, of businesses in general. And it's also one that it's not the glamorous work. It's kind of the dirty pain in the butt thing that you got to do at night when you want to go to sleep and you realize, you know what, I have data sitting in all these different places and that represents a risk, and maybe I'll deal with it tomorrow. The longer you put that off, the greater you expose your company to risk. And so the sooner you can get everything put into one place, integrated and secured, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, it's good advice, Lars. And I would also say that if you haven't cleansed your data or scrubbed your data in over a year, you might want to get that one done. I'm speaking for personal experience here. About a year and a half ago, we had our database, and it had been some time since we had last kind of updated it and scrubbed it and checked for duplicates and checked for new email. And we were really surprised. Like 15%, I think maybe 20% of the data was bad. So definitely get that done. And there's a lot of tools out there that are affordable that you can use to cleanse and scrub your data. But yeah, it's super important.
Yeah, it is. We have partnerships in place with Tower Data and Never Bounce, and so if anyone in our listening audience is interested and has a concern about making sure your data is clean, it is inexpensive and it is very useful. It helps with email deliverability, helps you keep your contacts up to date. So reach out to our support team and they can help connect you with the people that we work with to help you do that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. And then now I want to open it up to the audience. So send in any questions you have. We do have one so far, and it's a really good one, actually. We didn't really cover this, but it's from James. And he asks, what is A/B testing?
That's a good one. So A/B testing is where you have, for simplicity's sake, you have two emails, let's say, or two website pages, and with different messaging, different content, and you want to test to see which one's going to outperform the other. And sometimes companies do 4 or 5 or 6 iterations of the same message, the same email, same website page, and test it that way. But really, it's important. I mean, if you want to get started with it, just come up with 2 versions of an email and test that, send that out to say 50 or 100 folks, and see what the response is. And whichever one gets better response, that's your winner of the A/B test. So there's very few companies that do that well. And I think a lot of companies kind of overthink it or don't understand the value of it. But the key there is doing that, but then also iterating and doing it over and over again so that you constantly get a better and more effective piece of content over time. So that if you've A/B tested, say, 5, 6, 7 times with a variety of messages, 6 months in, you're going to have an email message that really connects, that really gets great response because you've tested it and you've looked at the response along the way.
Yeah, and you can do that in both on email and websites. In the GreenRope platform, it's very easy to do. If you go under Communicate, you'll see that the 3rd item down says Campaign Optimizer. And that's an email campaign optimizer that makes it very easy for you to build up to 5 different versions of an email and schedule them to go out. And the nice thing is that we track not just the performance of that one email, but also what happens after the click. So you can measure all the points that are generated as a result for each of your different types of designs, and it will automatically pick the winner and send that one to the majority of your list. So we actually did that with the invite to this specific webinar the email that you received about this webinar. So some of you got one version, some of you got the other version. There was a version that won, and that winner was what was sent to the majority of the list. So the campaign optimizer is very easy to use. It's very effective, and it simplifies this whole concept of how do you pick the best one. When you go into your email tracking area, also under the communicate area, you'll see that under track email that the first charts that you see when that page loads up at the bottom show a history of reads and clicks. And sometimes it fluctuates up and down depending on how much traffic you're sending on a daily basis. But you'll see there's a general trend that you can look at as well. And so to John's point, in understanding how are you doing over time, are you getting better at understanding what makes your customers or your leads, the contacts in your database, making them read or click, you'll know if you're doing better or worse. And so that helps. You can also look at some of the benchmarks and some of the other charts that are on that particular screen there to give you some idea about how well you're doing from an email marketing perspective. But over time, hopefully you're getting better at engaging with your customers. Now on the website side, you can also do A/B testing. Now some of the, I know that Google has this built in where if you do Google ads, you can do some optimization where you can give it a couple options and it will go in and pick the one that's performing better. But we also have that built on the website side. So if you design a landing page within the GreenRope platform, you'll see underneath you'll see there's a tab there called A/B splits or A/B testing. And in there, you can go in and create 2 pages and A/B test those 2 pages. And we do the same thing where we'll measure which one is performing better over time. And so we actually do this with our landing pages for our advertising, and we also do it with our pricing page. So there are 2 versions of our pricing page that you'll go to depending on which cookie was set on your browser. One of them is kind of a muted tone, and the other one has more colors. And so we do a comparison to see for that which one is actually working better. And so in our platform, as it turns out, we get a better response from the more colorful pricing scheme page. The other advantage to that particular thing that we have built in there is that we have learning, so that it will automatically adjust traffic to the better performing landing page. So, and John was touching on this before about how you can leverage AI to take advantage of the software tools. And technically, this is one of the things that kind of bugs me on a personal level. Everybody likes to call things AI. It's not actually AI. It's really just algorithms. But people like to say it's AI because it makes for good press. It's not AI. It's a learning system that is an algorithm that looks at how the different pages are performing. And so you can see that there. Go in and build a landing page, build a couple pages, drive some traffic, and see what it looks like, see how it works. And so actually I can share my screen here. I think I can share my screen here, and I can show you what we've got.
Let me make you presenter really quickly.
Yeah.
There you go. You should have access. And we're coming up on 2 minutes, just so you know, so I want to make sure we...
Okay. So does everybody see my screen there? Everybody see what I'm doing? So yep. That's real live data of our 2 pricing pages, and you can see how we compare the 2, and here you can see the actual number of conversions and value from the conversions that we've had in the last week that have come through one pricing page versus another. And so this is the A page. The A page looks like this. So if you go to the pricing page, you're either going to see that or you're going to see that. And the comparison that you see there is that this is A. You can see that it's actually converting better. So you can see that it's kind of been learning and giving a little bit more traffic to the A page versus the B. So that's an effective use of our tracking system, and using A/B testing combined with different kinds of content. So here the content is mostly the same, as you can see. I mean, it's just a difference in colors. But you can see how content actually makes a difference in how people behave.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I can definitely as well say that the campaign optimizer is an awesome feature, especially for marketers, with doing email marketing and really wanting to maximize their efforts as well. And we had a question about the cookies. from Chris, he asks, a lot of triggers are based on cookies. What about when Apple becomes cookieless shortly? Will this become session or post back based, as in a server to server?
Well, the reality is that if you can't go cookieless, because it will break most every website on the internet. So that's not going to happen. But the good news is that we also use different methods besides cookies to identify people. So there are other methods that you can use. If you really feel like digging into the technical details, just Google digital fingerprint, and you'll know what that. You'll get lost in lots of code, and you can see other methods that people use. But it's a blended approach to managing identity. And so if you take away the ability to manage cookies, you take away the ability to manage someone's identity. And so, which is why it'll never truly go away. It's how the internet works. But there are ways you can control that. And I'm sure we all know how to make our browsers go into incognito mode. So those are all ways where we can temporarily just put cookies in a browser session and then stop them. But those are just to kind of put things into perspective on how all that works.
Thank you. And then we have a last question here from Carol. She says, I just want to confirm that it's best to send an email blast with just 1 or 2 sentences that links to read more or read full article to a PDF or our website. Is that encouraging clicks?
Well, I would test it, right? We're talking about A/B testing. Do that version of it, and then do the longer version and see what the performance is. And I'm going to tell you that probably the shorter version is going to be better, but you never know until you put it out there. Now, it's not just the content; it's also the design and the look of the content. So, we want to make it look nice, make it branded, have some color in there. But yeah, people don't have a lot of time, right? We have very short attention spans. So based on that, you have to really, connect with them quickly. And if you have less staring you in the face in your email, browser, then it's probably going to perform better. But yeah, I would A/B test that.
Yeah, I can't support that enough. Really, the answer is always going to come out in the data, and you may find that there may be a middle ground. When you get our newsletters, you'll notice that we break them into 4 different articles, but the articles themselves are very short. We like to put some nice images near there, but we don't expect our users to want to dive through and read giant long paragraphs that talk about all the details of the product or the feature that we're highlighting or the new thing that we've made. We want to keep that short so that it's always benefit focused as much as we can make it benefit focused, so that people understand the why. And the more concise you can communicate that, why is that important to me, I think the better you're going to get people to actually take notice and read and digest what you're communicating with them.
Yeah, I hate to break it to everybody out there, but no one really cares about your new feature or new product. They care about what they can get out of it, right?
Yep.
And how that's going to benefit them in their life and their company. So, and the reason I say that is because there's so many companies that still don't quite understand that very simple and basic idea. What's in it for them, right? And lead with that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. And we came up we're just a little bit over an hour now. So we're going to sign off here soon. But if the audience does have any more questions, you can reach out to GreenRope, us at GreenRope. I'll be including my email as well as the email of our support team as well if you have any more questions about this specific topic. I want to thank both of you today. I think that this was a really informative webinar. We've been really focusing a lot on content lately, and so I think this was a really great webinar to round that out. Jon, thank you so much for your expertise in this area. Again, I think it's so important, and I think the more that we can learn about content marketing and ways to improve our strategies, all of our strategies, we're only helping ourselves, helping ourselves and our customers. So I really appreciate that. Jon, why don't you give a little brief brief pitch of content launch and what you guys do before we say our goodbyes.
Yeah, Content Launch is a content marketing platform we built for small agencies and SMBs. It includes all the content planning, creation, distribution tools you will need. We do have a freemium version of it, but for all folks that are on the call today, we're giving a 10% discount for those folks that sign up in the next 7 days.
Very cool, awesome, and we are also for all of our new people potentially interested in looking at GreenRope, we are also offering a discount for 10% for 12 months if you do sign up with us. I will be sending out the recording of this webinar along with John's slides, and you'll see and you'll have links to our websites and all that good stuff as well. So please feel free to respond to that if you do have any questions or want to learn more about any of these products. All right, well, I'll give you guys kind of a last few words to sign off here, and then we'll meet again next time.
Well, thanks, Alessandra. I think I'll just leave everyone with just one idea, which is content marketing is an investment in your time, and don't bite it all off at once. It's a 6-month, potentially year-long project, and take it in steps. The most important thing is you want to connect with people. You want to find out what's important to them and produce content that engages with them.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you, John. We appreciate that advice. And Lars, any last final words?
Yeah, just thanks to everyone for taking the time to be with us today, and realize that we're here as a resource to help you at any time. Anyone that uses GreenRope gets free support. So if you have questions about how to leverage content or anything you heard today, reach out to the support team, and they'll be happy to help you.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you all so much. Again, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us in this conversation. And please be on the lookout for the email coming from GreenRope that's going to have your recording and your slides. And of course, always stay up to date on our upcoming webinars on the GreenRope webinars page. We've got some amazing ones coming up. Next month, we're going to be doing a workshop on influencer engagement, and the following month, we're going to be doing one on best practices for building the best customer experience you possibly can. So a lot of great webinars coming up with some guests as well. So see you all on future webinars. And again, thank you so much for attending. Have a wonderful afternoon.